Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's Danny Limelight. And I need all of you to subscribe to According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and all other platforms.
What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to a mixed martial artist. She is none other than the Barbarian Princess. She is Cecileen Nova.
Yes.
Cecileen, how are you?
I'm great, and yourself?
Can't complain. It's another sunshiny day here in Southern California, and hopefully it's shiny where you are.
Oh yeah, pretty hot in the Oceanside area.
Right on. Dude, so my goodness, I first became aware of you when you essentially traveled down to Mexico last year to compete in Fearless Women's MMA Fearless 6. And I was like, well, let's be friends, right? And you were so kind to kind of follow and what have you. And
of course, I've seen you on Gym Crashers, so I was like, oh my gosh, it's Adam.
Yeah, I'm that guy. And shout out to the Gym Crashers because they're going to actually be doing in Galveston, Texas. Galveston, where the great Jack Johnson, the Galveston Giant, essentially called home. But Submission on the Shore, which is an all-female jiu-jitsu competition, as well as the Gym Crashers' own jiu-jitsu event. 2 events on one night on Galveston, Texas Island, coming July 26th, so a couple weeks away. So again, check out the Gym Crashers on their social media for any updates there may be. So how about that?
I'm excited.
So, I mean, Cecileen, let's kind of go back before Mexico, because obviously that was a tremendous experience, and shout out to the great Libby Canella for setting that whole thing up and essentially erecting Fearless Women's MMA for female competitors to compete without judgment, right? But How did you get involved in combat sports?
Well, it all started when I was a kid. I didn't start training in combat sports, but I did other sports like basketball. And when I first got rejected from playing basketball finally in high school, due to reasons other than, not being skilled, because I was in a predominantly white school. And so I didn't get picked for the basketball team. And I had always played basketball. Like I had won a championship for the city of Miami, for like the parks and stuff for the summer camps. And I was just disappointed. And then I was like, I have to do something else because I love sports. So I did cheerleading and dancing. So I did jazz, modern, contemporary, hip hop, obviously. I did that for a while. And then I went into the church to where I was singing and dancing. I was one of the praise leads in church. And, I had essentially a very dysfunctional life, but I always told myself I'm either going to be, some sort of entertainer, like a basketball player, or I'm going to be in the WWE, just in the ring. Like that's where I saw myself as a kid. I always told myself that. And it just like, I forgot about it. I put it like in the back of my subconscious mind, as we do. And because my life was so dysfunctional at one point, I had like an out of body experience where, I feel like I died and came back, and within that experience, I made a covenant with God. And I was basically like, I'm here to do your will, whatever that is. So it continued on that way. And I was training in jiu-jitsu. I started training in jiu-jitsu under one of the 10th Planet Academies because I was just miserable. Like I hated my job. I was working in food service. I started off in fast food, and I did dishwashing, cooking, sanitation, like on military bases and stuff like that. And it was just, I didn't like the jobs. They were nasty and just very degrading. And I was also going through a separation at the time with my ex. And I was like, I need to focus on something else because I'm just too depressed. And this is not me. Like I'm used to being happy and stuff, So I saw the 10th planet sign and I was like, I'm going to go inside and check it out. And I'm a mother. I have a, very hyper son. So I was like, let me put him in this. Maybe he can, kind of become disciplined, and got the whole family involved in that. And I just fell in love with it. So then they told me, they were like, oh, why don't you go and start competing and do one of the competitions and do Naga? I mean, you might not win, but you can try it, for experience. So I went, and I went to the one in New Jersey, actually, at the Menanin Arena. And when I went over there, I was like starstruck because I ran into like DDS. Like I saw John Calistine and I tried to shake his hand. But immediately when I told him, oh, I'm the 10th planet, he was like, but it was still like, oh my gosh, like I'm here, with like some of the biggest names. And yeah, I won first place with no coach. I just watched like videos for 3 days straight. I took a free week trial at Barbarian Jiu-Jitsu in New York, upstate New York, and I just fell in love with it. And then I just continued to do jiu-jitsu. I didn't think much of it. About 2 years after that, after I started training, I was always going to Cali Cage Wars, in Valley Center, because I used to live like on the reservation and stuff. And I just remember seeing Amanda Aspirin and Juliana Miller. And these women are so marketable. They're badass. They're charismatic. And I was like, you can be happy and be an MMA fighter? I was like, so I can do more than jiu-jitsu. I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try it. Why not? And everyone was laughing at me like, no one's going to put you, in the octagon. You don't have any experience, yada, yada, yada. And I didn't get it, what they were saying, kind of like what they were saying made sense. Like, this is not a sport that you want to play with. This is not fun and games, And yeah, I just jumped in there like a crazy woman. Obviously I was banned from my gym because I had to be a blue belt in order to do MMA. I broke tradition. So it's like I disrespected them in a way. And it really hurt me because I really, really respect the 10th planet, just the entire company. And I really look up to Eddie Bravo, and I really looked up to my sensei at the time. And it just hurt me. It was like a big brother, like just crushing me, And yeah, it was just something that I had to learn. Like, you listen to your coaches. You don't go against what your coaches say, But I was just being stubborn me. And even when I went to the following gym, and that's where I met Derek Anderson, in North County, he told me, he was like, please, like he begged me. He was like, please don't do this fight. Like, you're not ready. Like, please don't do it. And I was like, I'm going to do it. The reason why I was so invested in doing it was because I knew I could not only show my face and people could see who I was, but nobody wanted to fight this girl. Every single person dropped the card, and I guess whoever was her opponent didn't want to fight. But prior to that, I was following Joseph Phoebus, and I was praying. I was like, Lord, please allow an opportunity for me to be able to fight. And he just put out an ad, like a promotion saying, oh, we're looking for girls 135. And at the time I was like 160, 155. So I was like, okay, I can wait till 145, 135. So I did that, but obviously got beat up in my fight. I went in with zero confidence. Like, I thought I was good, the whole time. But when I came out, it was freezing, first of all. It was super cold. And then when those lights hit you and you see the crowd, you're like, holy shit. And then and then I walked up into the cage and I looked down and I just saw blood on the floor. And I was like, oh my God, this is real. So that's when reality hits you. And I'm like, okay, there's no turning back. I'm here. I might as well do it. And yeah, I just really dropped the ball because I wasn't using my instincts. And at the same time, it's just like everything went out the window. Like, as soon as I got punched in the face, I was like, what is this? I'm not used to this, So that was my first experience. And, obviously I made some mistakes along the way. I made enemies with my first two opponents. I mean, the second one, I tried to befriend her, but it still didn't, still didn't work out for me. And yeah, it was just a learning experience for me. And from there, I prayed. I was praying, God, please send me a female coach, to help me, because I felt like I was being misunderstood by the men. I felt like they were pushing the other men and they didn't care about me, because they're like, oh, you're 0-2. Like, nobody cares about you. Like, we already know you can't win. Like, they basically, what they told me was, win a fight and then we'll talk to you and then we'll get you some sponsors. Like, you're nobody, pretty much. And yeah, it got discouraging at one point, to where, I would just question myself, like, do I want to continue to do this? And even other female fighters telling me, like, oh, you're not fit for the job, you're not meant for this, microaggressions, like, I'm stupid because I'm multiracial and stuff, like, I'm not educated. And I would just tell them, like, I actually am. I've been to college, I study criminal justice, and I actually do the cybersecurity program and stuff in California. And one of the reasons I wanted to also do mixed martial arts is because it helped me. It was like a form of therapy. And I feel like a lot of the reasons why we have crime is because people need that therapy and those endorphins to help them with their mental health, right? So I want to kind of fuse, like a rehab probation program, a nonprofit organization, with criminal justice. So instead of putting people in prison and in jail, we can, rehabilitate them. So that's why I'm doing this. And at the same time, I grew a passion for MMA, because it's like, now it's like, I need to know my stuff. Like, I need to know the basics. Even when I watch fights from other fighters in Bellator, it's like, you're not putting your hands in front of your face. Like, you're a pro and you don't know the basics, So after that, yeah, I worked with Libby. I was supposed to have my first fight in San Diego with Fearless Woman when it first debuted in San Diego, and we just went through hell. We just went through hell trying to get the show together. Her ring girls didn't show up. My fight was scratched, so I stepped in as a ring girl, and then I just helped, taking apart the cage, and just, you have to humble yourself and say, I'm not above this, because I know other people that are like, I'm a fighter, I'm not going to help, set up and clean up. That's not my job, but it's good to have the experience. And then she asked me, do you want to fight in Mexico City? And I said, of course. And, they helped me, like Alan, Libby, my daughter got to go experience. We got a cleaning from the Aztecs. It was just a beautiful experience. Like, Fearless Woman MMA in itself, even though I didn't get to fight the first time, the women are so supportive of each other. And it's beautiful, because even now, like, all the time, the men will tell us, like, F her, you don't have to touch gloves with her and stuff like that. So that's what they put in our heads. Like, oh, don't be friends with her, she's going to be your opponent, and we shouldn't be like that. We should support each other, so that's something that I learned from Fearless. That's how I got it.
I mean, and that bit of your story, that in itself is it is fearless, right? It's a fearless woman, and some of the principles that Libby Canella of Fearless and her team there, definitely as huge, but it's something that basically reverberates through their entire roster. Everyone has competed, every female that has competed on all of the 6 Fearless cards have essentially been that, strong-willed, strong, mind, strong-bodied individuals, athletes, that have stories to them. And shout out to Libby and the Fearless.
Shout out to Libby.
Yeah,
I learned how to do weight cuts because of Libby and a couple of other people, obviously. And it's hell. Like, as an amateur to do that, it's like, wow, the pros go through this, and you just really learn, like, this is a full-time job. Like, this is a full-time job. Like, I get it now,
No, 1,000%. Which, it's fighting in Mexico, right? That's an international date, right? And as a somebody that is an amateur, you don't get. I mean, there's pros, right? I think they were talking to Calvin Cater, right? They were talking to Calvin Cater, who headlines this weekend's UFC Fight Island 7 card, right? And he's never fought in Vegas. He's never fought in Vegas, right? Like, and that's kind of like the pinnacle where, like, if you're a UFC fighter, if you're a fighter, whatever, Tyson's fought in Vegas, Troy Jones fought in Vegas. Like, everybody who's anybody in this last couple generation has fought in Vegas, right? But he's fought in Mexico City and Mexico that has produced so many warriors, not just in combat sports, not just in sport in general, but the Mexican people are a strong people, right? So,
they're strong, very, very strong.
absolutely. So this opportunity that came, your way was incredible, right? So
Not just for me. I feel like I gave opportunity to my opponent, and she's a very beautiful person. I can see she's spiritual, she's humble, and yeah, man, it's like when you look into their eyes, it's like, man, do I want to fight these girls? They're amazing people, and just the whole city of Mexico. It's like, wow, you see women with children sitting on the floor trying to sell flowers. You see children at the border, working and stuff. And like I said, you're just like, wow, do I really want to fight them? But the girls in Mexico, they can really bang. Like, I'm talking about 4 foot tall, 5 foot tall women. Like, the girls in California will have a run for their money. That's all I have to say. Like,
no,
Tactical Fight Academy, the girls are pretty good. So you have to fight them. Just beware.
but then again, international travel, or at least travels, in your story, that's something that is kind of like, I mean, it goes hand in hand because I detect an accent, but it's not an ocean.
Yeah, I'm from New York. I'm from New York. Yeah. I'm from New York.
So whereabouts did you grow up originally?
So Queens, New York. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with 50 Cent, Southside Jamaica, Queens. So yeah, from there. And I've also lived in Miami, Florida, like half of my life. So yeah, a lot of Hispanics. My grandmother, she spoke a different language, so that's where you hear the accent from.
And that's brilliant. As as an immigrant story. I don't think I would have gotten as far as I've gotten so far in my career. My mom is from Fiji, so I've got just a tinge of British accent. And I mean, honest to goodness, it's taken me to kind of like the pantheons of the sport because I don't know if I had I don't know if there's a San Francisco accent where I was born or where I was raised in Inglewood, California. I don't think that has an accent, but I mean that again, that smidge of
it's just like a kind of surfer skater accent.
just a tad. Now, in your move, from obviously New York to Miami and then now to Oceanside. I guess what did you learn from each of the places?
So New York is definitely a concrete jungle. Pretty cold. When I was growing up there, or when I lived there, it was just rough. Like, you're gonna get eaten alive if you don't know anything about the street. Even if you're not from the street, you're gonna come. You're gonna cross paths with someone, from the projects or whatever. But people are very blunt. They're very straightforward. They will run you over if you allow them to. So it's that kind of environment. I just kind of stayed out of the way. I would mind my own business. If I would walk home from school, I just change my routes all the time because it was crazy. Like, if the wrong person catches you walking and they don't like you, they would come out of the alley and you would get jumped. Like, it was like, I remember one time in particular when I was in school, they actually had a shootout between like the Bloods and the Crips. And so we had like metal detectors when we would walk in. You couldn't have your cell phone. So of course the girls, they would take the cell phones apart. Back in the day, you could take the battery out and we would put it inside our bra, like our wire bra. And I would take advantage and put like big old feminine products in my bag so they wouldn't search it, But that's pretty much. And yeah, it was cold, so you would have to wake up early, scrape the snow or whatever. So that's what it was like. But you could buy things for cheap in the corner stores. It's a melting pot of people. You have people from everywhere, from Grenada, Ukraine, China, Dominican Republic, just every country you can think of. And it's so beautiful because we're all like living together and going to school together, Probably the most traumatizing thing for me was probably 9/11, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't see myself going to Manhattan as much as people go now, But it definitely brought us together. We had a lot more crime back in the day before 9/11. Once 9/11 happened, it's like people started to unite a little bit more, And then moving to Miami, it's just the culture, the food. I learned about capoeira when I was in Miami. There's a lot of Brazilians there as well. A lot of people from the islands. Yeah, I just love it. The beaches. It's just like, wow, like people are so vibrant, the colors. And then in California, it's like people are very laid back. They lots of feminists, lots of people protesting, stoners, skaters. I mean, you name it. So that's the difference. And of course, the mixed martial arts culture here, like people really take it serious. Like when I started to get into jiu-jitsu, I noticed like, wow, this is a cult, It's pretty much a cult. No gi.
No, and it's crazy because I think it. Well, first off, you traveling, all of those ways. There's it's just like when you develop a skill set, right? Like your ability to adapt to certain situations. And again, there's ways that you can act in New York that you can't do in Miami, and there's something you can do in Miami that is probably not in vogue in Oceanside,
Yeah,
right?
in California or Oceanside, I feel like I can't be myself as much. Like I have to kind of water down. I've even had to like try to get a better vocabulary because back in the day I'd be like, yo, son, what's good? Right? You speak like that when you first, and I would just look back at videos and be like, oh my God, I'm mortified. Right?
Yeah, it can be a struggle. I mean, I remember, and it's funny, I mentioned about the tinge of accent, but like my mom, just to kind of show you an assimilation story, my mom, when she came over in '82, I mean, she essentially spoke English, but not the American English, but like the Fijian British Commonwealth accent. I mean, it's funny, like people in my family, they even call her the Queen, when she was living, right? But she had she spoke English, right? The way that people in England do. And she got so accosted that when she got with my dad, who's American citizen, American descendant of slave from Indiana, I should say. And she had me and then later my sister, whose birthday it happens to be today. So happy birthday, Mara. But she made sure that Mara and I didn't, have any type of accent. It's actually the reason why I've kind of let it go a little bit because she, passed away some years ago. But
what part of Indiana?
Oh, thank you. But we couldn't speak like that in front of my mom. She would slap the shit out of us because she wanted us to assimilate, the way that Americans do, right? So, and that's so, and it's crazy because for somebody that of the maybe similar ethnic descent that maybe grew up in Oceanside or just grew up in Miami or just grew up in New York and not having to assimilate beyond the neighborhood or beyond the state or beyond the city, it's kind of hard for people to kind of grasp. Don't even trip. My
neighbor's dog.
It set my pug off right now. Let me bring him. This is that's Pugsley. So here, that's Pugsley fucking Woods. If you do the but he heard barking. He was like, what's going on? Here we go, bud. Yeah, but you're fine. But again, for those who don't, that live in kind of, not to say like, oh, the streets of New York are safe, right? Or the streets of
Oh.
Miami are safe, or even
No.
yeah, they're-
I think Oceanside is a little bit safer, but Oceanside still has these gangs. Like I was living in one part of Oceanside called Center Street, and I didn't know anything, right? I just got here, and so the Mexican mafia essentially runs like Vista, Carlsbad, and Oceanside, Miami. Yeah, so it's like a prison gang, and they kind of get involved and try to get the younger kids to get into bad things, and that's why I think things like martial arts are so important to get the youth away from that, right? And so they have a different clique called pozole, just like the soup,
not
because
the
that
soup.
town, yeah. So the whole part of Oceanside, that town was brought up because this Mexican woman used to outsell pozole, and that's how they were able to build their homes. And now they have nice homes and nice cars, and the Mexicans were able to get money and establish businesses. So people from Pozole would come over to Center Street, and they would break all of our windows, and they had like an ongoing war because they killed like a 14-year-old girl that was in one of the gangs there. So it was like ongoing from 2016 and probably before that. So when I first moved there, it was still fresh. Now it's died out a lot, you know. But now it's all about football. Oceanside High football team. That's what's big there, and jiu-jitsu because they have the gym right there.
No, man, I could only imagine. My goodness. And I mean, for those who maybe listening, that might not know of Oceanside or Carlsbad, to put it into perspective, Carlsbad is the home of none other than Legoland. So this is
Yes.
all
Sean,
happening.
I believe Sean White, right? Or Tony Hawk?
Yeah, Shaun White, the Olympian and skateboarder and snowboarder. Yeah, he's from Carlsbad. Like,
Yeah, it's a nice area. It's upper class, I would say.
yeah. So I mean, it's almost a tale of two cities. Right?
Mhm.
So before coming to Oceanside, your MMA and jiu-jitsu kind of awakening. Did that happen? Did that happen? In Miami or New York or?
No, when I lived in Florida, so my sister was in the Marine Corps. She came around like 09, 2010, somewhere around there. And I don't know, I just had this gut feeling like move to California. Like ever since then, something told me like move to California. And it would not let me like sleep. Like I tried to even move to Indiana at one point, and my gut was like, no, move to California, you know? And yeah, I moved to California, and now I know why.
Yeah,
I,
it can.
I met my destiny. And I was like, God, well, if this is what you want, because I'm telling you, as soon as I prayed, everybody dropped the card, all the girls. And then right after that, I met Libby. Like everything I prayed for lined up. Because usually we pray and things don't happen as fast, right? So I
Right.
felt like this was my destiny. Like you're just lining up the pawns for me.
That's amazing. Now obviously nobody told you about the taxes, so I apologize for that. Because we're
That's
kind of like, I mean, I guess the only thing that would be different would be like New York, right, in terms of comparability, but like what it means to be a Californian, we literally pay like up the wazoo for being a Californian. Like it's so
well, Miami and New York are pretty much the same price as California right now, to be honest with you. Unless you live upstate New York, upstate you can get like a 3-bedroom for 500, $600 a month.
no way. I think they need to hire you for the I don't know, like the
Resource base.
of the visitors bureau or something like that.
Yeah,
You made
yeah.
a very good case to remember.
Yeah, I'm
Man,
always like, man, I should move back up north, but I don't like the weather.
It happens. I went to Florida once, right? And I actually flew into Fort Lauderdale to go to a retreat in Wesson, right? Not too far away. And I remember coming out of the Fort Lauderdale Airport, like everything was at a standstill in terms of traffic. And we kind of peeked out
Yes,
the tour bus and what have you.
it's like
There
LA.
was an alligator, like a 15-foot alligator running loose. At that moment, I was like, cool, bro. Well, I'm good. Like, that's a descendant of a dinosaur, like alligator, 15-foot alligator. I was like, I'm good. I'll take my chances with earthquakes and all.
Right. A little bit.
Seems like we're on the move.
Yeah, I was moving. Sorry about that. I'm gonna put it on a different table. That table was wobbly.
So in terms of your first day in training, like did you know of what jiu-jitsu or MMA was? Had you watched it on TV or?
Yes, I had watched MMA before, and obviously the UFC, everyone knows about it. So it just wasn't like an interest for me at all. It just wasn't anything that I was interested in. It was when I got on the mats and I realized, like, wow, I forget about everything when I'm here because I'm so focused on the moment. That's like my Zen time. So I look at it as like a religion. Like when I'm in the gym, that's my temple, So that's how I looked at it. And then that gave me a passion for it and just wanting to learn because you're always learning. It's like, wow, they submitted me. Okay, next week I'm going to come back and I'm going to submit you. That's not going to happen,
So what was that first day like?
So the first day I went in, like I said, it was just like a whatever day. Like I went in and I noticed like these long, lanky guys and they're just doing a bunch of leg locks. And I was like, what is this? Like you've seen it before, but then when they actually talk about the leg locks and how to do them, I learned about how to stack if someone's trying to arm bar you. And yeah, I don't know how the heck I got my first submission on day one, but I did. But I'm a pretty strong girl. Like if I get you in a grip, I'm pretty strong. So I think that added to my interest in it, if that makes any sense. And it was like dancing. It was like choreography, pretty much. Like I tried a wrestling class on a Wednesday, and it was just like, you're just like dancing across the mats, right? You're just like flipping each other's bodies, picking each other up. I was like, wow, this is like dancing.
Now, did you have any like misconceptions in terms of like what you thought it was when you were watching it on TV versus, what you actually experienced?
Yeah, I thought it was just a bunch of people just punching each other in the face. It's like, oh, they're just punching each other in the face. Or look at these guys in these white pajamas with these belts on. Like, because I call the gi, I say, oh, pajamas. That's like the best way I can explain to like a newbie. Oh, no gis with the shorts and a shirt. And then gi jiu-jitsu, you wear the karate pajamas.
No, so I mean a fun story. The last gym that I regularly trained at was Fight Academy in Pasadena, California, nice. And we had, it was the coolest thing, and to me, it was probably one of the greatest like examples of what combat sports is, and the community and how wide ranging it could be. Was, I mean, we had people that were literally employees of JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratories, that send rockets in the air for NASA into space and everything like that. And then you had a coach that may or may not have been a high school or college graduate, right, with a record and whatever. And again, this scientist is having trouble with a 1-2 bunch, and somebody of, I guess, I wouldn't say lore, but a different educational background
Right. All types
is
of
teaching
people.
them the fine points, right? And I was just like, where else in the world can you get that, right? And on the same mat, we're sweating together, we're bleeding together, and like thinking about all of the the weird kind of social norms that get essentially rejected when you come into combat sports, right? You're like, I don't want anybody sweating on me. I don't want anybody to bleed on me. You know,
Right.
I don't like. I'm really sensitive to smells, right? All of
Mhm.
that go right out the back burner once you again somebody is trying to unceremoniously turn you.
Yeah.
You know,
That's when you kick it in. Like I was sparring the other day, in boxing, and the guy hit me. Like the fighter I was telling you about, LJ, our pro fighter from the Compound MMA. And so he hit me, and I don't know what came over me. I just became angry, and next thing I knew, I'm just throwing a bunch of punches and swinging and throwing haymakers. And they're like, "Wow, you need to have that aggression the entire time," you know?
no, and 100%. And again, it's the amount of art, the amount of skill that happens. I mean, essentially, you are it's a science, right? They call boxing the sweet science and what have you. And again, that's one facet of MMA, right? That's just striking, right? But then the science of boxing versus a Muay Thai background person versus a kickboxing backgrounded person against somebody that might have a traditional karate background or have none of that at all, right?
Right.
And then that's one aspect of it. Then you have to get to like takedowns, right? Because I mean, not everybody is Pat HD Berry, where got to a top 10 heavyweight in MMA, and essentially when he got taken down, he was just like, you know what, I'm retired from MMA. I'm gonna do just kickboxing and what have you. And luckily, it worked out for him because his fiance is none other than Thug Rose Namajunas, right? So
Mhm.
it worked out
Yeah.
for Pat Berry. But even still, there's so much mechanics that would give any engineer problems, right? There's so many things that encompass combat sports that again, unless you're an ardent supporter or patron of the sport, you wouldn't know. But it does look like just rock'em sock'em robots. But then
Yeah.
when you get into class and kind of try to learn some of these
Right.
moves and methods, it's crazy.
And it's just like you said, you meet different people. Like shit, I've run into, sorry if I don't know if I'm supposed to curse or not on here, but yeah, you run into like Navy SEALs, you run into like a grandpa, you run into a guy who's a computer science major and he's just like really good at it. And because they're nerds, they transition that into jujitsu and then they become the best at it, right? Or you'll run into people who are philosophers and they have like master's degrees. And it's just like, wow, all these different people, even women, no matter what size or shape they are, you're just blown away by the different skills that they have.
No, 100%. And again, especially right now in this kind of weird point in our history, and everybody's fighting. You're this, you're that, whatever. Like there's no better kind of like calling card, a commercial for combat sports than right now. It's just like, oh, you haven't trained today, or you don't know what this is. Because again, we've got, in any gym across Southern California, across anywhere in the world, you've got every political affiliation, you've got every religious affiliation, you've
Right.
got every, you know, I guess, identification in terms of
Right.
sexuality
But
and
we all
preference.
come together.
Like everybody's here.
But the thing is, jujitsu is the one thing that brings us all together, no matter what, if you're Republican, Democrat, if you're in the gray area, as I like to call it, it doesn't matter. Once you're doing the sport, it doesn't matter. We're all equal, you know?
No, 1,000%. And Don McGuire of the Fighter's Voice with Don McGuire says, "Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon." Yes, and yeah. So what I want to get to
Hmm.
is your nameplate. It's your social media. You know, identification, it is your fight name. And we were talking off air about one Taz Mexican Devil. Well, I was basically crapping all over it, but I think Barbarian Princess, that's probably one of the most ingenious and unique
Thank you.
fight names that there are. So how did that come about?
So it's pretty much like a play on words with femme fatale. So I got the Barbarian from Derek Anderson, Derek the Barbaric, who fights for Bellator.
Right.
He was actually the first coach to ever coach me in one of my fights.
Really?
And I didn't really know who the heck he was. Like, I didn't know he was such a big deal. And like, now I get it. And like, he asked me, he was like, please don't do this fight. But I did it anyways. And he supported me. And that literally like almost had me in tears. Like when he showed up, the day that he showed up, I was like I was shocked. Like, wow, he's supporting me, because I felt like nobody had my back in the gym, like, or at all. Because they like to push out men, and I hadn't won any fights. So I was like, nobody really cares. Like, who gives a shit about my dream, right? They're like, oh, win some fights, and then we'll talk about sponsors, and So that's pretty much where Barbarian Princess came from, and also because the Roman Empire fell because of the barbarians. So it makes sense. So that's like my alter ego. That side of me that like when I get angry, when I'm fighting, like if you punch me in the face, I just like, I'm trying to tap into that.
I think it's amazing. And especially, the love and care of, somebody of his stature, right? To essentially corner you and support you in this endeavor. That's amazing,
Right.
and that has to be such a confidence builder, for you early on in your career,
Right.
That you had that type of support behind you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that he did that. I mean, yeah, I definitely felt pretty confident going into the fight. I was like, okay, I have Derek on my side, right? But yeah, he's not only a different race, he's also a male. So that for me, it speaks volumes, and to know that he asked me like, don't do this fight, but he still supported me. That was like that moment in MMA where I was like, wow, this is a big deal. And I don't think he understands like what that meant to me. It like really, really meant a lot to me.
That's amazing. Now we're gonna go not too far back in the DeLorean into the time machine, but obviously 2020 was a crazy year for a lot of us, right? And especially if you're a fighter, because you're dependent, your growth in the sport, as well as your way to gain acclaim was essentially unceremoniously taken away. Now, obviously, it could be it could be so much worse, right? But for fighters who fight for a living, and even ones that are trying to acquire skill, it was a rough year, right? So you had the opportunity to go to Mexico City for Fearless Women MMA 6 incarnation. What was that experience like?
I mean, amidst COVID, it was crazy. So first of all, we met like at the border. So I crossed over the border and I paid to get in or whatever. And yeah, they pretty much took money from me, the Mexican customs. They were like, oh, you got to pay us like 2,000 pesos if you're going to get in. And I was like, fine, here's the 2,000 pesos. And me and Libby, we just pretty much did whatever it took. Like, I didn't care what I had to pay. They even somehow switched the plane ticket to where I wasn't on the same plane as Libby, which is weird because I specifically went to her house to make sure that we were flying out together. So I don't know how they managed to do that, but somebody looked me up and tried to screw that up. And yeah, so we had to buy another ticket. I had to wait a couple of hours. And I was supposed to be meeting with my coach, Aaron. Libby set that up as well. And I never got to meet with my coach until like 15 minutes before going in the cage, and it was just a beautiful experience meeting all the girls. And the altitude. Oh my gosh, in Mexico City, I couldn't breathe. When I first got there, I was like people told me, but I didn't get it until I got to the hotel. And I was like, Lord, I cannot breathe. I was super winded.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Again, there's a reason why the U.S. Olympic Training Center is in Colorado, because of obviously the elevation, and lack thereof. And there's a reason why, the acclimation or lack thereof to the climate in Mexico City was essentially the beginning of the downfall of the great Cain Velasquez, former UFC champion, because he essentially lost to Fabricio Verdun right in Mexico City because he didn't. I think that the preparation between the two, Fabricio Verdun, the Brazilian, right, who speaks Spanish, essentially went to a higher elevation than even Mexico City, like a month, if not 2 months before the fight to get acclimated, right? And then, Kane comes in, I think about a week before, and this is Cardio Kane. This is somebody who was a juggernaut. His skill, his speed, for a heavyweight was, I don't think you'll ever see another Cain Velasquez again. He was just built differently. But even the Mexico City, climate, the elevation, it wreaked havoc on him. So, what was that like for you?
I mean, I had a rough time breathing sometimes, and even like I said, my daughter went with me. She actually had to stay behind one of the days because she has asthma and her chest got really tight. So the day of my fight, she had to stay behind and just like watch it live stream because it was that difficult. And then when I was in the cage at one point, me and my opponent, we were both struggling to breathe. We were like, like looking at each other. We're like, are we going to move? What's going on? So it's, yeah, got to run next time at a higher elevation and just train up there before getting into any fights.
That, I mean, my goodness, that in itself, is almost a second opponent, right? You've got your opponent of that night, but you've also got your opponent in terms of, the climate. So I could only imagine.
The climate, the different air, the different smells, just everything.
Yeah, and that. I mean, obviously, fighter, but a mother first. When you, that's a quote George Lopez. When your daughter's all like, "I got a pain in my chest, can't breathe," that's scary. But then you look over and you're like, "I'm kind of, honey, I'm going through the same thing." Like,
right.
It's a weird one.
Exactly, and even prior to that, I trained for like a year. I was away from my children. And so like, that's one thing that people constantly try to throw at me, like that's the other opponent they want to throw at me like, oh, you're not with your kids, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, I'm training. This is what I want to do. Because, it's a sacrifice. I don't know if other people would have done that, but it's what I needed to do to focus.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Now, Don McGuire wants to know, I guess, in regards to your nickname, do you speak in tongues like Aspen Ladd when she's in the moment? Because barbarians, they can kind of talk out of sort. So is that
sometimes? Sometimes. I don't know if you know this, but I'm actually high function autistic. So Asperger's, I have Asperger's. So yeah, sometimes I'll have like that. I'll have like that little moment, or like I have just different social cues. I don't like to be around people. Sometimes I'll like withdraw. It's just I have OCD like crazy. So there's also that I'm dealing with. But I just want people to know, just because, let's say you have a speech impediment, or if you do have Asperger's, it doesn't mean that you can't do what I'm doing. Like Albert Einstein, he had, his troubles with autism as well. So you just never know, don't give up on yourself just because someone tells you can't do something. And in fact, I even tutored one of my friends, Raquel. Now she's my friend. but she has autism, and they told her she was never going to graduate high school. Today, she's a registered nurse, and she graduated with her bachelor's. So that just goes to show you can do whatever you want to do, even if it's not fighting, you know. Even if you can't fight, go be a ring girl, go help with the commission, go help setting up, be a photographer, you know, whatever your passion is. If it's related to MMA or if you want to be a doctor, you can always find ways around it. It's like I always say, you know, here's an example. College isn't for everyone. You know, some people go to a trade school, they get a trade, and they go to work, you know, whatever works for each individual.
That's it. You know, none other than the great Herb Dean. When I first started, and Herb Dean is Francis Savant Young of Fight Academy. But when I asked him, you know, how does one get to, you know, be a part of the sport? And he's just like, in the early days, I did everything. I helped set up and drive the cage that night. I helped take down tables and chairs. I sold merchandise, like everything. Because again, if you love the sport, there's always going to be a way that you can contribute to, you know, everybody that, you know, the promotion, the fighters, whatever that may be. So, you know, no contribution is too little, right? Because again, you could be the difference between a show or a particular fight basically going on or not going on at all from your contributions, you know?
Exactly.
Now, I want to know, right, in terms of your favorite fighter, do you have a favorite fighter as of right now, past or present?
I'm going to do one past and one present. So past would definitely be China from
Yes.
WWF, WWE. And present, I would definitely say Holly Holm, because she's southpaw like me.
No, and I love it. You know, China was even for people that don't like pro wrestling, right? You kind of, at the time that she was on top, you knew China, right?
Mm-hmm.
You knew, because at that point, you know, especially somebody that was a physically strong woman, right? But also, you know, had a bit of sensuality to her. She was like the love interest for the great Eddie Guerrero, right? And you know, and such chemistry that they created, you know, on the screen, that again, even if you're not a pro wrestling fan, you can kind of understand the story, and you know, and it reverberated through, you know, through everything that they did. That's why both, you know, unfortunately, both of Eddie Guerrero and China, Johnny Laurer, have both passed away in recent years. But you know, it's those things that, you know, the fact that we're, you know, almost 10 years after Eddie's death. I mean, at least 10 years after Eddie's death, and you know, close to 10 years with Joni's unfortunate passing. We're still talking about them today, and they're immortalized, you know, in our hearts, our minds, and TV screens.
Yeah, they definitely pass on their legacy. And back to China, Libby actually told me she met China at the Sheraton where they had the first Fearless in San Diego. And when I walked up and I first saw it, and she was like, "This is the location," I was like in tears, like, wow. Because the reason why she chose the Sheraton is not only because she met China, but it's because it has the word "she" in it.
Yeah.
So that was a legacy, you know?
Yeah. And again, you know, for that time period, you know, that early 90s, you know, actually not early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, you didn't see a China like that. And I know exactly the notebook that you're talking about, you're referencing with Libby, because when she was on Gym Crashers, want to say last year, if not the year.
Yeah, I saw the interview. Yeah.
Yes. But she brought that, and like WCW, you know, backstage passes, because she won I think it was like a contest where she got to go backstage, and I was just like in awe, you know. And I've seen that China picture and autograph too, and I did the same thing. Like literally, my hair You got goosebumps. Like the hair standing on end.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You're part of history.
Absolutely.
So now you're connected to Derek Anderson, me, Libby, and China.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I mean, and again, most wouldn't view her as a fighter, but again, like for what she had to go through, she's every bit as much of a fighter as Chris Cyborg, right? Because the fact that she had to go through, again, a lot of the name calling. Like I've even witnessed it with Chris Cyborg myself, where she's like the nicest of people, right?
Right.
Nicest of people, so kind, so considerate, and the obscenities that are thrown at her, you don't become a fan of the sport by like if this is what the sport's about, you're like,
right.
Not,
I was like that at one point. I was like, do I really want to deal with this? Like, this is a lot. But I was just like, I'm pretty strong. I'm not gonna let cyberbullying and stuff get to me, because that's not the way to go. And when I saw the wrestler that she actually passed away, she offed herself off the cyberbullying. We need to learn, like I said, to support each other. Because we deal with our own things. It's like some of the coaches say, a fight can make or break you, right? Or if you get punched in the face or you lose a fight and that's it, you never want to fight again. It's like that.
1,000%. And again, I think it's because of those, because of the Chinas and because of the Chris Cyborgs and so many others in all, Lisa Leslie, when it comes to WNBA basketball. I mean, there's so many, positive, female role models, not just in sport, but all across that. Again, if we're talking about incremental steps, we wouldn't have a women's MMA, or, if we didn't have Billie Jean King, in tennis, facing a male, right? A professional male. If we, didn't have LPGA, women's golfers, an organization for that, we wouldn't have it. Like every bit of it is a part of a larger struggle, right? And again, whether those influences or not, those are every bit of the influence that reverberate through the sport. And that's one of the reasons why, I mean, one of my favorite promotions in the world is Invicta, because I think, the women's MMA, even after Chris Cyborg, even after Ronda Rousey, even after Gina Carano, these seminal figures, these pioneers, Misha Tate, the list goes on and on. Even with that, there are still people that don't know that females fight, right?
Right.
We fight professionally. And even still, the pay gap can be, quite different from that of male counterparts, right? So I think it's absolutely important, going forward, that we recognize these people for what they were, because again, they gave light and spirit to your dream.
Right. And even other like amateur fighters that I like I have been watching Jasmine Pouncey for years. I like Jasmine Pouncey. I like Juliana Miller, even though I don't really personally know her or anything. Amanda Aspirin, I think she has it. She has that it factor. Those three girls, they have like Andrea Sabalos, like she's willing to fight anybody. She doesn't care if you're 125, she's going to meet you at 125, even though she's like super skinny. If you're 135, she's going to try to meet you at that, and those are the types of things that are inspiring,
No, 1,000%. And again, shout out to Julianne Miller. Shout out to, I mean, literally all of the gals there at 10 Planet Freaks with the Manolo, the broad.
I love Manolo.
It's
apparently Manolo and my coach don't get along, but I don't know about the history. I just go train,
No, 1,000%. And Stephen Tatum says females fights, they kick ass. And it's 100% true. You put a female fight on any card, boxing, MMA, amateur, pro, what have you. When people are leaving, going to their cars and remembering what they saw that night, chances are the names on their lips are the names of the female competitors of that card. And then again, that's no besmirchment on any male fighters that fought on the card or the other fights on the card. But again, female MMA, even with all of those seminal figures, are in very much is where men's MMA was 25 years ago.
Right. Exactly. Like Zhang, when I first saw Zhang with Joanna, I was like, wow. But I have seen Zhang fight before, like do her fights in Japan and stuff. But when I actually saw her in the UFC, I was like, wow, she hits like a truck. I was like, that was the card on this entire show. It was them. They made the show,
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's the embodiment of what strength is. Real unforshakable strength, So, I mean, speaking of strength, right? There's many people that you draw from in terms of your strength as not just a fighter, but a person, bar none. So let's get some shout outs out of the way to the people that have influenced you both professionally and personally to get you to where you are today.
I would definitely say Derek Anderson, of course. Sean Loeffler, my coach right now. Even when I had to fight an opponent previously and I was in a different gym, I've always liked him. Like, he keeps it real. He tells you like exactly where you're lacking. Like, he just has so much knowledge. My other mentor, LJ Porte, he fights for us under the compound. Also my Buddhist mentor, Sally Busby, and of course Libby Canella, and Manolo at one point, was just like telling me, like, dude, like, what are you doing? It's just those little notes that I take from people. Even if it's bad criticisms, I put that in my head and I'm like, okay, are they making a valid point, or are they just hating? Because you have to take that into consideration, at all times. Let me see who else. Definitely my parents, my dad, because they came through in the beginning. My family was like, you're wasting your time. Why are you over there? And when I went to Mexico City, they're like, we're proud of you, So that means a lot to me.
That's amazing. And again, you are a shining example of like all of their love and care, personified. So that's absolutely amazing. Now, for those who haven't already followed the Barbarian Princess on social media, where can they find you?
At Barbarian MMA on Instagram. You can follow me there.
There it is. Again, I'm a follower. You guys should be too. Again, Cecileen, this has been an honor and privilege to have you on. I can't wait to see what your next foray into combat sports will be. But we'll definitely be cheering you on, And we thank you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. Thank you so much. And if you haven't already done so, we definitely encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and yes, Twitch. We're on Twitch. Yes, that's a thing. But you can follow us right there. The link is in the link tree. And go ahead and subscribe. Cecileen, you're subscribed to the According to Woods podcast, right?
Of course I am. According to Woods, and also Gym Crashers, like I said, where I originally saw you. But thank you so much for having me. It was an honor. Really appreciate it.
The honor is all mine. And again, thank you guys for joining us. Shout out to the Gym Crashers there. And we are out.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure